$5,000. That was the amount of cash sitting in the black leather wallet Elena held in her trembling hands. For a waitress making $3 an hour plus tips, it was a fortune. It was enough to save her daughter's life. It was enough to pay off the debts drowning her. The man who left it behind was rude, arrogant, and had vanished into the rainy night. No one saw her find it. No one would ever know if she slipped it into her pocket. But Eleanor Vance made a phone call that night that would shatter her reality. She thought she was just returning a lost wallet. She had no idea she was walking into a trap, a psychological game designed by a billionaire with a dying wish. And the man waiting for her? He wasn't just looking for his money. He was looking for a soul. The neon sign of the Rusty Spoon flickered with a dying buzz, casting a sickly yellow light onto the rain-slicked pavement of Fifth Avenue. Inside, the air smelled of stale grease, burnt coffee, and despair. Elena Vance wiped the counter for the 100th time that night, her wrist aching. The clock on the wall read 11:45 p.m., 15 minutes until closing. Her feet were swollen in shoes that had lost their soles 3 months ago, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the gnawing anxiety in her chest. In her apron pocket, folded into a tight square, was a letter from St. Jude's Medical Center. Final notice. Her 6-year-old daughter, Mia, needed a respiratory specialist, and the insurance, what little she had denied the claim. She needed $4,000 by Friday, or the treatment would stop. Elena, quit daydreaming and bus table 4. The voice of Rick Thorne, the night manager, cut through her thoughts like a serrated knife. Rick was a man who sweated grease. He was 50, bitter, and suspected every employee of stealing napkins. "I'm on it, Rick," Elena said, keeping her voice steady. She couldn't lose this job. Not now. She walked over to table 4, the booth in the far back corner. It had been occupied by an elderly man for the last 2 hours. He had been a nightmare. He wore a suit that looked expensive, but dated, like something from the 1970s. He had ordered nothing but hot water with lemon, complained that the water was tepid, and scolded Elena for not smiling enough. When he left, he didn't leave a tip, not even a penny. Elena sighed, grabbing her rag. She wiped the crumbs from the table, and as she slid into the booth to reach the far side, her hand bumped against something hard-wedged between the cushion and the wall. She pulled it out. It was a wallet. But not just a wallet. This was thick, soft, black alligator skin. It felt heavy. Elena looked around. The diner was empty, except for Rick, who was counting the register at the front, his back to her. She opened the wallet. Her breath hitched. Her heart hammered against her ribs so hard she thought it might crack them. Cash. Crisp, $100 bills. A stack of them as thick as a deck of cards. She didn't count it, but she knew. It was thousands. 5,000, maybe more. Mia. The name flashed in her mind. This money could pay the hospital. It could pay the rent. It could buy Mia a winter coat. The old man was gone. He was rude. He probably had millions more where this came from. He didn't even tip. "Elona, you find gold back there or what?" Rick shouted, turning around. Panic surged through her. If Rick saw this, he would take it. He would claim he'd put it in the safe, and by morning, the cash would be gone, spent on his gambling debts. Just a stuck piece of gum, Rick," Elena lied, her voice cracking slightly. She shoved the wallet deep into her apron, beneath the terrifying medical bill. "Hurry up, I want to lock up." Elena rushed to the back, her heart racing. She hid in the employee bathroom, locking the flimsy door. Her hands were shaking violently as she pulled the wallet out again. She stared at the money. It was right there. Salvation. "Take it," a voice whispered. "The world has kicked you down for years. This is the universe paying you back." She closed her eyes, tears leaking out. She thought of Mia's cough. She thought of the cold apartment. Then she looked at the other side of the wallet. There was an ID card. Arthur Sterling, CEO, Sterling Industries. 1080 Skyline Estate Drive. Arthur Sterling. She knew the name. Everyone in the city knew the name. He was the recluse billionaire who owned half the Skyline. He was known for two things: his ruthlessness in business and his absolute hatred of the press. There was also a photo tucked behind the ID. It wasn't a credit card or a VIP pass. It was a small, black and white photo of a young boy, maybe 10 years old, sitting on a bicycle, laughing. Elena touched the photo. The old man, the rude customer, he carried a picture of a laughing boy. "I can't," Elena whispered to the empty bathroom. "I can't steal." It wasn't about fear of getting caught. It was about who she was. If she stole this, she would be saving Mia with dirty money. She would be teaching Mia that survival meant taking what wasn't yours. She pulled out the business card tucked behind the cash. It had a private number. "Just return it. Maybe he'll give you a reward. $100. Anything." She pulled out her cracked smartphone. It had 4% battery left. She dialed the number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. "Sterling Residence," a voice answered. It wasn't the old man. It was a woman, crisp, cold, and efficient. "Hello?" Elena stammered. "My name is Elena Vance. I think I found Mr. Sterling's wallet." Silence on the other end. Then a sharp intake of breath. "You found it? Where?" "At the Rusty Spoon Diner, on 5th. He left it in a booth." "Hold on." There was a muffled sound, like a hand over the receiver. Then the woman returned. "Mr. Sterling is indisposed. However, he requires that wallet returned immediately. It contains sensitive documents." "Okay," Elena said. "I can leave it with my manager, Rick, and you can send a courier." "No!" The woman's voice snapped, sharp as a whip. "Under no circumstances are you to give it to anyone else. Mr. Sterling does not trust couriers. If you have it, you must bring it to the estate tonight." "Tonight?" "Mom, it's midnight. I don't have a car. The buses stop running to Skyline Drive in 10 minutes. "That is not my concern, Ms. Vance. If the wallet is not returned by 1 a.m., we will assume it is stolen and notify the police. Mr. Sterling takes theft very seriously." The line went dead. Elena stared at the phone. Theft? She was trying to help. She looked at the time. 12:05 a.m. Skyline Estate was on the North Cliffs, 10 miles away. She burst out of the bathroom. Rick was putting on his coat. "Rick, I have to go. Emergency." "You walk out before the floors are mopped. Don't bother coming back tomorrow, Elena. I got 10 girls waiting for this job." Elena looked at the mop bucket. Then she looked at the door. If she went to the police, Rick would intercept. If she stayed, she'd be arrested for theft by a billionaire who could crush her. She grabbed the mop. She mopped the floor in 4 minutes flat, a record fueled by adrenaline. "Done," she panted, throwing the mop into the bucket. "I'm leaving." "Hey, tips!" Rick held out his hand. He took 40% of their tips. "House policy." Elena reached into her pocket, grabbed the 3 crumpled dollar bills she had earned from a 6-hour shift, and slammed them into Rick's hand. "Keep it," she spat. She ran out into the rain. The rain was freezing, a relentless sheet of ice-cold needles. Elena caught the last city bus just as the doors were hissing shut. She collapsed into a wet seat, clutching the wallet against her chest inside her coat. The bus only went as far as the bottom of Skyline Drive. The wealthy didn't take buses. At 12:40 a.m., the bus driver kicked her out at the end of the line. "End of the road, lady." Elena stepped out into the darkness. Above her, the winding road to the Sterling estate disappeared into the fog. It was a 2-mile hike uphill. She started walking, her cheap shoes soaked through instantly. The wind whipped her hair across her face. "Why am I doing this?" she asked herself, shivering violently. I could have taken $500. Just $500. He wouldn't have noticed. But she kept walking. She thought of the photo of the boy in the wallet. That photo meant something to the old man. At 12:58 a.m., her lungs burning, she reached the iron gates. They were massive, topped with gold spikes, looming like the entrance to a fortress. A camera buzzed, turning toward her. "State your business," a metallic voice boomed from the intercom. "Elena Vance, I have the item." The gates groaned and began to swing open slowly. There was no driveway, just a long, paved road leading to a mansion that looked more like a Gothic cathedral than a home. She walked up the path. A black sedan was parked in the circular driveway. The front door of the mansion opened before she even reached the steps. A woman stood there. She was tall, wearing a severe grey suit, her hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. This must be the voice on the phone. "You're late," the woman said. She didn't look at Eleanor's face. She looked at Eleanor's wet, muddy shoes on the pristine marble porch. "I am Ms. Grix, Mr. Sterling's executive assistant." I had to walk," Eleanor said, shivering. She reached into her coat and pulled out the wallet. "Here it is." Ms. Grix reached for it, her eyes gleaming with a strange intensity. "Hold on." A deep, smooth voice echoed from the hallway. Ms. Grix froze. Walking out of the shadows was a man in his 30s. He was handsome in a shark-like way. Slicked back blonde hair, a silk robe, and a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He looked like a younger, sharper version of Arthur Sterling. "So," the man said, swirling his drink, "this is the Good Samaritan. Mr. Julian," Ms. Grix said, her voice tight. "I was just handling the retrieval." Julian Sterling ignored her and walked right up to Eleanor. He smelled of expensive scotch and cologne. He looked down at her with a mix of amusement and disgust. "My father loses his wallet in a greasy diner," Julian laughed softly, "and a waitress brings it back. Intact." He snatched the wallet from Elena's hand before she could react. He flipped it open. He thumbed through the cash. "Amazing," Julian murmured. "It's all here. You know, most people in your position would have taken a finder's fee, or just taken it all." "I'm not a thief," Elena said, her voice shaking from the cold. "Aren't you?" Julian stepped closer, invading her personal space. "Or are you just smart? Did you think that by returning this, you'd get a reward bigger than the cash inside? Did you Google my father's net worth on your way up here?" Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I didn't Google anything. I just wanted to return what belongs to him." "Right. Altruism," Julian scoffed. He pulled a single $100 bill from the wallet and flicked it at her. It hit her wet chest and fluttered to the ground. "Here, for your trouble. Taxi fare. Now get out." Elena stared at the bill on the wet pavement. "I didn't come for a reward," she said quietly. "Take it," Julian snapped, his smile vanishing. "Take it and leave, before I check the security cameras and find out you stole a credit card." "I didn't touch anything. Julian, that is enough." The voice was raspy, weak, but carried the weight of a sledgehammer. Elena looked up. At the top of the grand staircase, standing in the shadows, was the old man from the diner. Arthur Sterling. He wasn't wearing the dated suit anymore. He was in pajamas, leaning heavily on a cane, looking frail and ghostly pale. But his eyes, steely blue, were sharp. "Father, you should be in bed," Julian said, his tone shifting instantly to fake concern. I was just handling this stray." "Bring her in," Arthur commanded. "Father, she's soaking wet. She'll ruin the rugs." "I said," Arthur thumped his cane on the floor, the sound echoing through the massive hall. "Bring her in." Julian's jaw tightened. He glared at Eleanor. "You heard him. Move." Eleanor stepped into the foyer. It was warmer inside, but the atmosphere was freezing. The hall was filled with priceless art, but it felt like a mausoleum. Arthur slowly descended the stairs. He stopped 3 steps from the bottom, looking eye to level with Eleanor. He didn't say thank you. He didn't smile. He looked at the wallet in Julian's hand, then at Eleanor. "You looked inside," Arthur said. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. I had to find an ID," Eleanor stammered. "And you saw the money?" "Yes. And you needed it." Eleanor paused. She could lie. She could pretend everything was fine. But this man seemed to see right through her skin. "Yes," Eleanor whispered. "I needed it more than anything." "Then why did you bring it back?" Arthur asked. Elena thought of Mia. She thought of the photo in the wallet. "Because of the picture," she said. "The boy on the bike. I have a daughter. I know what it looks like when a parent loves a child. I couldn't steal the memory of that." The silence that followed was deafening. Julian rolled his eyes, taking a sip of his drink. Ms. Grix stood like a statue. Arthur stared at her for a long, uncomfortable minute. His face was unreadable. Then his expression darkened. "You're a liar!" Arthur spat. Elena recoiled as if slapped. "What?" Arthur turned to Julian. "Check the secret compartment, behind the coin pouch." Julian frowned, confused. He dug his fingers into a hidden slit in the leather. He felt around. "It's empty, Father." Arthur turned back to Eleanor, his face twisting into a scowl of rage. "There was a key in there. A silver key." "Where is it?" I didn't see a key," Elena cried. "I didn't look in any secret compartments." "Don't play innocent with me," Arthur roared, his voice surprisingly loud for a frail man. "That key opens a safe deposit box containing items worth more than your entire life. You took it." "I didn't." "Julian, call the police," Arthur ordered. "She kept the cash to look honest, but she stole the key. It's the oldest trick in the book." "With pleasure," Julian smiled, pulling out his phone. Elena's world spun. This couldn't be happening. She had walked through the rain, sacrificed her dignity, returned a fortune, and now she was going to jail? If she went to jail, Mia would go to foster care. Mia would die without her treatments. "Please!" Elena fell to her knees. She didn't care about the mud on the rug anymore. "Please, sir, I swear on my daughter's life. I didn't take a key. I just wanted to do the right thing." Arthur looked down at her, his eyes cold and hard. "The police are on their way," Arthur said. "You have 5 minutes to produce the key, or I will ensure you never see your daughter again." The silence in the grand foyer was heavier than the marble pillars holding up the ceiling. Julian held his phone, his thumb hovering over the call button, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. Elena remained on her knees, the damp cold from her jeans seeping into her bones. She looked at Arthur Sterling. The old man was leaning on his cane, breathing somewhat laboriously, his eyes fixed on her with the intensity of a hawk spotting a field mouse. "Wait," Arthur said, raising a hand. Julian sighed, exasperated. "Father, really? She's a thief. Let the cops handle it. It's 1 a.m. I have a meeting in the morning." "Put the phone away, Julian," Arthur commanded, his voice low but leaving no room for argument. He turned his gaze back to Eleanor. "Get up." Eleanor scrambled to her feet, her legs shaking. She wiped her hands on her apron, conscious of how dirty she looked in this pristine palace. "Ms. Grix," Arthur called out without turning around. The severe assistant materialized from the shadows. "Take Miss Vance to the library. Bring her a towel and some tea. Dry tea, no sugar." "Father, what are you doing?" Julian stepped forward, his face flushing with irritation. "She stole the key to the master vault. You know what's in there. We can't just give her tea." "I want to hear her story," Arthur said simply. "I want to know why a woman who returns $5,000 in cash would steal a piece of silver worth $10. It's not about the value of the key, it's about what it opens," Julian snapped. "To the library," Arthur roared, banging his cane again. 10 minutes later, Elena was sitting in a leather chair that cost more than her entire year's salary. The library was a cavernous room filled with floor-to-ceiling books, smelling of old paper, mahogany, and cigar smoke. A fire crackled in the hearth, but it didn't warm the chill inside her. Miss Griggs had handed her a rough towel and a cup of bitter tea, then stood by the door like a prison guard. Arthur sat behind a massive oak desk, the wallet sitting between them like an unexploded bomb. Julian paced behind him, swirling his drink, looking like a caged tiger. "So," Arthur began, steepling his fingers. "Eleanor Vance, age 26, high school dropout, employed at the Rusty Spoon for 4 years, unmarried, one dependent, Mia Vance, age 6. Elena froze. The teacup rattled in her saucer. How do you know that?" Arthur didn't answer. He pulled a file from a drawer and tossed it onto the desk. It slid across the polished wood and stopped right in front of her. She opened it. It was her life. Her credit score. Terrible. Her eviction notices from 2 years ago, and right on top, a copy of the letter from St. Jude's Medical Center regarding Mia's respiratory therapy. You investigated me?" Elena gasped. "In the last hour? I have resources that work faster than the police," Arthur said calmly. "I know you are drowning, Miss Vance. I know you are 3 months behind on your electric bill. I know your daughter needs a treatment that costs exactly $4,200. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "That is a lot of pressure for a young mother. Desperate people do desperate things. You saw the cash. You wanted it. But you were too afraid to take it directly. So you returned the wallet to gain my trust, hoping for a reward. When you realized I wasn't the generous type, you kept the key. You figured you could come back later, or maybe sell it to someone who knows what it opens." "No!" Elena stood up, the file falling to the floor. "That's a twisted fantasy. I didn't take anything. I didn't even know who you were until I saw the ID." "Sit down," Arthur said. "I won't." Elena's fear was turning into anger. "You have no right to dig into my life. I brought your money back. I walked through the rain. And you sit there, in your mansion, judging me because I'm poor. You think because I'm a waitress I have no honor?" Julian chuckled from the shadows. "Honor doesn't pay the rent, darling." Arthur ignored his son. He opened a drawer and pulled out a checkbook. He uncapped a fountain pen, gold, of course, and scribbled something. He tore the check out and held it up. $10,000, Arthur said. Elena stared at the slip of paper. "Confess," Arthur said. "Give me the key. Admit you took it. Take this check and walk away. No police, no jail. Your daughter gets a treatment. Your debts are paid." The room went silent. The fire popped. $10,000. It was the answer to every prayer she had whispered for the last 5 years. All she had to do was lie. All she had to do was say, "Yes, I stole it," and give him... What? She didn't have the key. "I can't," Elena whispered. 20,000, Arthur said, writing another check. He laid it on top of the first one. Julian's eyes widened. "Father, are you insane?" $20,000, Miss Vance. Confess. Tell me you took it because you were desperate. Tell me you hate people like me. Just give me the key." Elena looked at the checks. She looked at Julian, who was watching her with a mixture of greed and malice. She looked at Arthur, whose face was a mask of stone. She thought of Mia. Mia needed that money. But if she confessed to a crime she didn't commit, she would be branded a thief forever, and she didn't have the key. If she took the money, they would expect her to produce it. When she couldn't, they would call the police anyway and use her confession against her. It was a trap. "I don't have the key," Elena said, her voice trembling but clear. "You can offer me $1 million. I cannot give you what I do not have." Arthur stared at her. For a second, just a split second, something flickered in his eyes. Surprise? Respect? Then it was gone. "Very well," Arthur said, closing the checkbook. "Ms. Grix, lock her in the East Guest room. Call the police. Tell them to be here at 8 a.m. I'm too tired to deal with the authorities tonight." "You're keeping me here?" Elena cried. "That's kidnapping." "It's a citizen's arrest," Julian sneered. "Consider it a hospitality upgrade. The bed in the guest room is softer than a jail cell." "Move," Ms. Grix said, grabbing Eleanor's arm with a grip like iron. Eleanor was dragged out of the library. As the heavy doors closed, she looked back. Arthur Sterling was sitting in his chair, staring at the empty air, looking older and more tired than anyone she had ever seen. The East Guest room was nicer than any apartment Eleanor had ever lived in. It had a 4-poster bed, silk drapes, and a bathroom with a tub the size of a swimming pool. But the windows were locked, and the heavy oak door was bolted from the outside. Elena paced the floor. It was 2:30 a.m. Her phone was dead. Mia was at her neighbor's house. Mrs. Gable promised to watch her until morning. But if Elena didn't show up by 7:10 a.m. to get Mia to school, Mrs. Gable would panic. She went to the window. We were on the 2nd floor, a sheer drop to the stone patio below. No escape. She sat on the edge of the bed and put her head in her hands. How did it end up like this? Suddenly the doorknob turned. Elena jumped up, backing away. The lock clicked. The door opened slowly. It wasn't Ms. Grix. It wasn't the police. It was Julian. He slipped inside and closed the door softly behind him. He wasn't wearing his robe anymore. He was dressed in a sharp black suit, as if he were ready for a funeral. "Shh!" He pressed a finger to his lips, smiling. It was a charming smile, the kind that made you forget he was a shark. "Don't scream. I'm here to help." "Help?" Elena scoffed, backing until her legs hit the bed. "You told him to call the police." "Theatre, my dear. Pure theatre." Julian walked over to the minibar in the corner of the room and poured himself a water. "My father is difficult. Senile, honestly. He gets obsessed with these little tests and paranoid delusions." "He seems pretty sharp to me," Elena said. Julian turned, his face hardening. "He's a tyrant. He's controlled my life for 35 years, and now he's dying. Did you know that? Liver failure. He has maybe 2 months. Elena stayed silent. She remembered how frail Arthur looked, the yellow tint to his skin. "He's rewriting his will," Julian whispered, taking a step closer. "That's what this is about. That key. I told you I don't have it." "Drop the act, Elena," Julian hissed, his voice dropping to a menacing growl. "We're alone. No cameras here. That silver key opens his private safety deposit box at the First National Bank. Inside that box is the latest draft of his will, the one where he threatens to leave everything to charity unless I prove I'm worthy." Julian reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a thick envelope. He tossed it onto the bed. $50,000. Julian said. Cash, untraceable. Elena looked at the envelope. It was bulging. Give me the key, Julian said, his eyes wild. I know you took it. You saw the secret slot. You're smart. You took it as insurance. Give it to me. Take the 50 grand, and I'll unlock the back door. You can walk out of here. I'll tell my father you escaped through the window. Elena's heart pounded. $50,000. That was life-changing. But the truth remained. She didn't have the key. Julian, she said slowly, I swear to you, I did not take it. Maybe it fell out in the diner. Maybe your father lost it before he came in. Julian's face twisted in rage. He lunged forward, grabbing her by the shoulders. Don't lie to me, you gutter rat. If you don't give it to me, I will make sure the police plant drugs on you. I will make sure you go to prison for 10 years. Your daughter will grow up in the system, wondering why her mommy abandoned her. Eleanor struggled, pushing him back. Get off me. Where is it? Is it in your bra? Your shoes? He reached for her pockets. Stop! Suddenly, the door swung open with a violent crash. Julian! Ms. Grick stood in the doorway, holding a taser. Behind her, surprisingly, stood Arthur Sterling. He looked exhausted, leaning heavily on his cane, but his eyes were blazing with fury. Julian froze. He released Eleanor and stepped back, smoothing his suit jacket, his face instantly shifting from rage to innocence. Father, Julian stammered. I was just trying to get the truth out of her. I was interrogating her. I heard you, Arthur said. His voice was quiet, deadly. I heard the offer. $50,000 for the key to the will. I was testing her, Julian lied, sweat beading on his forehead. Just like you were. I wanted to see if she would crack. Arthur walked into the room. He didn't look at Julian. He looked at Eleanor. She was trembling, clutching her collar, tears of fear streaming down her face. Arthur looked down at the envelope of cash on the bed. You didn't take it, Arthur said to Eleanor. I don't have the key, Eleanor screamed, finally breaking. I don't have it. I don't have it. Why won't anyone believe me? Arthur closed his eyes for a moment. He let out a long, shuddering breath. I believe you, Arthur whispered. The room went dead silent. What? Julian blinked. Arthur turned to his son. The look of disappointment on his face was so profound, it felt like a physical weight in the room. I believe her, Julian, because she refused $10,000 from me and $50,000 from you. A thief with a starving child doesn't turn down $60,000 unless she truly does not have what we are asking for. So she lost it, Julian yelled. She's incompetent. No, Arthur said. He reached into the pocket of his robe. Slowly, with a trembling hand, Arthur pulled out a small, silver object. It was the key. Elena gasped. Julian's jaw dropped. You had it? Elena whispered. The whole time? It was never in the wallet, Arthur said, his voice thick with emotion. It has been in my pocket all night. This was a setup, Julian realized, his face turning pale. You set me up. I set everyone up, Arthur corrected. I am dying, Julian. You know this. And I have been terrified. Terrified that I raised a son who values gold more than loyalty. Terrified that I have no one in this world who is honest. He looked at Elena. I left that wallet there on purpose, Miss Vance. I sat in that diner for 2 hours watching. I saw how you treated the homeless man who came in for water. I saw how you worked. I left $5,000 cash to see if you would bring it back. You tested me? Eleanor felt a wave of dizziness. You put me through this hell for a test? I needed to know if there was an honest person left in this city, Arthur said. But then, the test changed. When you arrived, I needed to test him. He pointed his cane at Julian. I wanted to see what my son would do. Would he thank you? Would he help you? Or would he try to destroy you to get to my money? Arthur looked at Julian with tears in his eyes. You offered her $50,000 to steal my will, Julian. You threatened a mother with prison. You are not worthy of my name. Father, please. It was the heat of the moment, Julian pleaded, falling to his knees. Get out, Arthur said softly. Dad, get out, Arthur roared, swinging his cane and smashing a vase on the table. Get out of my house. You are cut off, effective immediately. Ms. Grix, have security escort him off the premises. Ms. Grix stepped forward, the taser still humming in her hand. Let's go, Mr. Julian. Julian looked at his father, then at Eleanor. He sneered, spat on the floor, and stormed out. Ms. Grix following close behind. Elena was left alone with the billionaire. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her shaking and exhausted. You're a monster, Elena whispered. Arthur flinched. He looked at the silver key in his hand. Yes, he admitted quietly. I suppose I am. I have spent my life building an empire and destroying my family. And tonight, I used you as a pawn to prove my son's failure. He walked over to the window and looked out at the rain. You can go, Ms. Vance. Ms. Grix will drive you home. You have my apologies, and you can keep the taxi fare Julian threw at you. Elena stared at his back. He was sending her away? After all that? After the terror, the threats, the emotional roller coaster? She felt a surge of indignation. She walked up to the bed, grabbed the envelope of cash Julian had left, the bribe, and marched over to Arthur. She slammed the envelope against his chest. I don't want his dirty money, Elena said. And I don't want yours. You think you can buy people? You think you can play with lives like chess pieces because you're lonely and dying? That's not a test, Mr. Sterling. That's cruelty. She turned to leave. Wait. Arthur's voice cracked. Elena stopped at the door. The boy in the photo, Arthur said. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the floor. That wasn't Julian. Elena turned back slowly. It was my other son, Arthur whispered. Lucas. Elena frowned. I didn't know you had another son. No one does. He died 20 years ago. Overdose. He was sensitive. Like you. He hated the money. He hated what it did to us. I pushed him too hard and he broke. Arthur turned to face her. Tears were streaming down his face, cutting paths through the wrinkles. When you said you returned the wallet because of that photo, because you knew what a parent's love looked like, Arthur's voice broke. It broke me, Eleanor, because I realized I haven't felt that love since the day he died. Until tonight. Until a stranger showed more integrity in 1 hour than my living son has shown in his entire life. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the checkbook again. Please, Arthur said, let me do one decent thing before I die. I'm not taking a payoff, Elena said firmly. It's not a payoff, Arthur said. It's a job offer. The rain had stopped by the time Elena left the Sterling estate that night, but the storm in her life was just beginning, in a different way. She didn't quit her job at the Rusty Spoon the next day. She didn't call Rick to scream, I quit. She simply didn't show up. For the first time in her life, she had a safety net, though it felt more like a tightrope. The job offer Arthur Sterling had placed on the table wasn't for a maid, or a cleaner, or even a traditional personal assistant. I need a conscience, Arthur had told her in the library, his voice rasping with exhaustion. I have surrounded myself with yes-men and sharks for 40 years. I have no one to tell me when I am wrong. You stood up to me. You stood up to Julian. You have a spine. I want to hire you to help me dismantle my legacy of greed before I die. The salary was $100,000 a year, full benefits, and most importantly, immediate coverage for Mia's respiratory therapy at the best private clinic in the state. Elena moved into the caretaker's cottage on the edge of the estate 3 days later. It was a charming, ivy-covered stone house that looked like it belonged in a fairy tale, a stark contrast to the cramped, mouldy apartment she had left behind. The first month was a blur of medical appointments and strange meetings. Mia began her treatments, and for the first time in years, Elena heard her daughter breathe without that terrifying rattle in her chest. That alone was worth dealing with the devil. But Arthur Sterling was a complicated devil. He was dying, and he knew it. The liver failure was progressing. His skin grew more yellow, his energy shorter. He spent his days in the library or the sunroom, wrapped in blankets. Elena's job was bizarre. Every morning, she would meet Arthur for breakfast. He would present her with a list of business decisions, mergers, acquisitions, foreclosures, that Sterling Industries was planning. "Tell me what to do," Arthur would say, sliding a file across the table. "My board wants to evict 300 families from the tenement blocks in the Lower East Side to build a luxury mall. Legally, we can do it. Financially, it's a gold mine. What do you say?" Elena would read the files. She would think about the people living there. People like her. "You can't do it," Elena would say firmly. "Renovate the buildings. Keep the tenants. You have enough money. Why make more if it creates homelessness?" "It's bad business," Arthur would argue, playing devil's advocate. "It's bad humanity," Elena would counter. And Arthur would smile, a genuine, crooked smile, and signed the order to cancel the eviction. They became an odd pair, the dying billionaire and the former waitress. As the weeks turned into 2 months, the ice between them thawed. Elena brought Mia up to the main house sometimes. Arthur, who had been terrifying that first night, melted around the 6-year-old. He would show her his collection of antique globes. He would let her sit on the expensive Persian rugs and color. "She reminds me of Lucas," Arthur whispered one afternoon, watching Mia chase a butterfly in the garden. "So full of life. Before I crushed it out of him." "You can't fix the past, Arthur," Elena said gently, pouring him his tea. "But you're fixing the present. You've donated millions to the children's hospital in Lucas's name. You've changed the company policies." "It's not enough," Arthur coughed, a wet, hacking sound. "Julian is out there, waiting. He's like a vulture circling a carcass. He knows I'm weak. He's planning something." Arthur was right. Julian hadn't disappeared. He had been silent, which was far more dangerous. One afternoon in late November, the peace of the estate was shattered. A fleet of black SUVs pulled up to the main gate. Elena was in the library reading to Arthur when Ms. Grix burst in, looking flustered for the first time in history. "Sir, it's Mr. Julian, and he brought lawyers, and the police." Arthur gripped his cane, his knuckles turning white. "Let them in." Julian strode into the library, wearing a smile that didn't reach his dead eyes. He was flanked by 3 men in sharp suits, corporate sharks from the top law firm in the city, and 2 uniformed police officers. "Hello, Father," Julian said smoothly. "You're looking yellow." "Get to the point, Julian," Arthur wheezed, not standing up. "Why are you trespassing?" "I'm not trespassing. I'm protecting my inheritance," Julian said. He pulled a document from his briefcase. "This is a court order signed by Judge Holloway this morning. It grants me temporary power of attorney over your estate and freezes all your assets, pending a competency hearing." "Competency?" Elena stood up, stepping between Julian and his father. "He is perfectly sane." Julian looked at Eleanor with pure venom. "Ah, the waitress, the gold digger who wormed her way into a dying man's bed. "Excuse me?" Eleanor gasped. "We know everything, Miss Vance," Julian sneered. "We know about your debts. We know my father is paying for your daughter's medical bills. It's a classic case of elder abuse. You're manipulating a senile old man to drain his fortune before he croaks." "That is a lie!" Elena shouted. "Is it?" One of the lawyers stepped forward. "Mr. Sterling has liquidated $40 million in assets in the last 6 weeks, donating them to charities chosen by you. He has cancelled profitable real estate deals on your advice. We have testimony from the board of directors stating that Mr. Sterling is acting erratic and contrary to the company's interests." "I am acting with a conscience," Arthur roared, trying to stand, but his legs failed him. He collapsed back into the chair, gasping for air. "Father!" Julian feigned concern, but didn't move to help. "See officers. He's physically and mentally unfit. He needs to be placed in a care facility, immediately." "You won't touch him." Elena grabbed Arthur's hand. "Officer, remove her," Julian commanded. "She is now trespassing on property under my control." The police officers looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, if the court order is valid—" "It's valid," the lawyer snapped. Arthur squeezed Eleanor's hand. His grip was weak, his skin burning, hot. "Eleanor," Arthur whispered. "The key. Remember the key." "What?" Eleanor leaned down. "Not the silver one," Arthur gasped, his eyes rolling back slightly. "The other one. The trust. Find the trust." Then Arthur Sterling convulsed. His eyes rolled back into his head, and he slumped sideways in the chair. "Arthur!" Elena screamed. "Call an ambulance!" Ms. Grix yelled, rushing to the phone. Chaos erupted. Paramedics arrived within 10 minutes. They loaded Arthur onto a stretcher. Julian stood by the fireplace, checking his watch, looking bored. As they wheeled Arthur out, Elena tried to follow. "Not you," Julian blocked her path. "Family only." "He needs me. He needs a doctor. You need to pack." Julian smiled cruelly. "You have 1 hour to vacate the cottage. If you're not off the premises, I'll have you arrested for squatting. My daughter is there, her medical equipment." "Not my problem. The free ride is over, Cinderella. Go back to serving coffee." Elena watched the ambulance disappear down the driveway, tears blurring her vision. She had lost. Julian had won. He had the court order. He had the money. He had the power. She ran to the cottage, grabbed Mia, and shoved their clothes into trash bags. She didn't have a car, so she had to call a taxi. As they waited in the rain outside the iron gates, gates that were now locked against her, Eleanor felt a despair deeper than before. She had tasted hope. She had seen that money could be used for good. And now, the monster was back in charge. Arthur died 3 days later in the hospital. Elena read about it in the newspaper. Julian had barred her from visiting. The obituary described Arthur as a titan of industry and mentioned he was survived by his loving son, Julian. It made Elena sick. She was back in her old apartment. The damp was back. The dread was back. But she still had a little money saved from her 2 months of salary, enough to keep Mia's treatment going for another month. Then a letter arrived. It was heavy, cream-colored stationery with a black wax seal. To Ms. Elena Vance, from the law offices of Hemlock and Strauss. Rye, the last will and testament of Arthur Sterling. Your presence is required at the reading of the will, the letter said. Tomorrow at 10:20 a.m. Elena stared at the paper. Why? Julian had power of attorney. He had surely destroyed any will Arthur made. Unless... Arthur's last words echoed in her head. The trust. Find the trust. The conference room at Hemlock and Strauss was glass-walled, overlooking the city skyline that Arthur Sterling had helped build. Julian sat at the head of the long mahogany table. He looked triumphant. He was already wearing a new suit, a diamond watch, and an air of absolute authority. He glared at Elena as she walked in, wearing her simple black dress. "I don't know why she's here," Julian snapped at the elderly lawyer, Mr. Hemlock. "I told you, she's a nobody, a leech." "The late Mr. Sterling insisted," Mr. Hemlock said in a dry, dusty voice. "Please sit, Miss Vance." Eleanor sat at the far end of the table. She felt small, but she kept her chin up. She was doing this for Arthur. "Let's get this over with," Julian said, checking his phone. "I have a meeting with the architects for the new mall at noon." Mr. Hemlock adjusted his glasses and opened a leather folder. "As you know, Mr. Julian Sterling successfully petitioned the court for temporary competency conservatorship prior to his father's death," Mr. Hemlock began. "Exactly," Julian smirked. "Which renders any will he wrote in the last 6 months void." "That is the general rule, yes," Mr. Hemlock agreed. However, Arthur Sterling was a very paranoid man. He anticipated this, which is why 3 years ago, long before his illness affected his mind, he created a horrific little instrument known as a poison pill trust. Julian's smile faltered. "A what?" "A conditional irrevocable trust," Hemlock clarified. "It governs the entirety of his 65% stake in Sterling Industries, as well as his personal liquid assets, totaling $4 billion. "Okay, so I'm the beneficiary of the trust," Julian said, waving his hand. "Whatever, just give me the paperwork." "You are a beneficiary," Hemlock corrected. "But the trust is unique. It has a character clause. Arthur stipulated that his heir must prove themselves morally sound to inherit the empire. If they fail to meet the criteria, the assets are to be liquidated and donated entirely to the Lucas Sterling Rehabilitation Fund." "Criteria?" Julian stood up, slamming his hands on the table. "I am his son. I ran the company for 10 years. What criteria?" Hemlock turned a page. "The trust stipulates that the determination of the heir's moral fitness lies solely in the hands of an appointed guardian. This guardian has absolute veto power over your inheritance. If the guardian deems you unworthy, you get nothing, not a cent." The room went deadly silent. "Who?" Julian whispered, his face draining of color. "Who is the guardian? Is it you, Hemlock?" Mr. Hemlock shook his head. He looked down the long table. Julian followed his gaze. He looked at Elena. "No," Julian breathed. "No, that's impossible. He met her 2 months ago. The trust is 3 years old." "The trust was created 3 years ago," Hemlock explained, "but the position of guardian was left vacant, to be filled by Arthur's final designation. On the night you intervened at the estate, Arthur had already mailed the designation form to my office. It was postmarked the morning after Miss Vance returned the wallet." Hemlock slid a piece of paper toward Julian. It was a notarized document, signed with Arthur's shaky hand. "I, Arthur Sterling, hereby appoint Elena Vance as the sole guardian of the Sterling Family Trust. She shall judge the character of my son. She knows what honesty looks like. She knows the weight of temptation. Her word is final." Julian stared at the paper. His hands shook. He turned to Eleanor. The arrogance was gone. The cruelty was gone, replaced by a sheer, primal panic. "Elena," Julian said, his voice cracking. "Elena, look, we got off on the wrong foot." Elena remained seated. She didn't shout. She didn't gloat. She just looked at him with a calm, steady gaze. "You called me a gutter rat," Elena said softly. "You tried to frame me. You kicked a dying man out of his own chair. You threw a mother and a sick child onto the street in the rain." I was under stress," Julian pleaded, sweating profusely. I can change. I can do better. Look, we can work out a deal. Half. I'll give you half the company. $2 billion. Just sign off on my fitness." "You still don't get it," Elena said. "It's not about the money, Julian. It never was. That was your father's lesson, and you failed it. Again. And again." She looked at Mr. Hemlock. "Does he get a stipend?" Elena asked. "The trust allows for a monthly allowance, equivalent to the minimum wage of a Sterling Industries entry-level employee," Hemlock read. "To prevent starvation." Eleanor nodded. "Then that is what he gets." "You can't do this!" Julian screamed, lunging toward her. 2 security guards stepped out from the wall, restraining him. "I'll sue you. I'll kill you." "Mr. Julian," Hemlock said calmly, "the trust also states that any legal challenge to the guardian results in the immediate forfeiture of the monthly allowance." Julian went limp. He stared at Elena, seeing for the first time the woman he had dismissed as a nobody. She held his life in her hands. "I won't sign off on you, Julian," Elena said, standing up. "Not today. Maybe not ever. But I won't destroy the company, and I won't let it be sold for parts. I'm going to run it, with the board. And we are going to do it the way Arthur wanted in the end. With a conscience." She picked up her purse. "You can apply for a review of your status in 1 year," Elena said, "but I suggest you use that year to learn what it's like to live on minimum wage. It might teach you some manners." Elena walked out of the glass room. She took the elevator down to the lobby. Outside, the sun was shining. The air was crisp. She took out her phone and called the hospital. "Hi, this is Eleanor Vance. I'd like to confirm Mia's appointment for next week. And I'd like to make a donation to the respiratory wing. A large one." She stepped onto the sidewalk, merged into the crowd of people, and walked toward the future, no longer a victim of the rain, but the one who carried the umbrella. Elena Vance didn't just find a wallet that night. She found her destiny. She proved that even when the world strips you of everything, your integrity is the one thing no one can take unless you give it away. Julian Sterling learned the hard way that the true value of a person isn't in their bank account, but in their character. What would you have done if you found that wallet? Would you have kept the cash or made the call? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching, and remember, the biggest tests in life often come when you least expect them.